mother, Rob's grandmother, fell last night and was in the hospital late, and they took her home. She walked out, but you know, as you well know, she may come.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. We'll have gifts for Rob to take home anyway if she doesn't.
Great. Thank you. Well, thank you for inviting me. So my name is Rob Leaming, and I just was recently asked to come and talk with you guys about some of the things that I've learned recently, and some of the things that I'm doing in my life that are affecting our community and just the well-being of everyone around. So I've been volunteering through the Yoga Collective of Yakima for just over a year now. And you know, it's one of the really great things that our valley is offering is free yoga and meditation, you know, experiences. We offer about 70 classes a month. And this next month, with my private endeavors and volunteering through the collective, I'll have about 13 yoga and meditation classes that I'll be teaching. So I'd actually like to start us off with a little meditation. And, you know, helping us to recognize what we can control and when we can control it is happening through a conscious mind. And so, if I can ask everybody to just, you know, get comfortable in your chair, and we'll sit with a nice straight spine, and our shoulders are pulled back, our chest is out a little bit, our head is slightly tilted back. Close your eyes if you're comfortable. To become aware of that right now moment, we focus on our breath. Our breath is something that we normally are just allowing our autonomous nervous system to work for us. So we're going to shift our breath in through our nose, directing it to our lower abdomen, a belly breath. Breathing in deeply and slowly, pausing for a moment, and exhaling audibly through our mouth effortlessly. When we hear our senses are letting us know that we're letting go of something that no longer serves us. So when we shift our breath, we can shift our thoughts to the things that we're grateful for. Every time our environment takes us away from a calm and centered, peaceful feeling, we can turn inward. We can shift our breath. We can take control of our body. We can take control of our mind. We can experience the life that we want to enjoy. And if we can only control one thing, we can really only control ourselves. And there's only one time that we can control it. That's right now. We should do it in a favorable way. So when we breathe in, we focus on the life experience that we're having right now. When we breathe out, we're letting it go and opening us to the next life experience. We scan our body, we release any tension. We focus on the feeling of the air coming in through our nose as it fills our belly and into our chest. And then we release it effortlessly. We can feel the tension released from our shoulders, our neck, our jaws, our cheeks, our eyes, our temples. I realize that I can control me and I can only do it right now. We forgive ourselves for anything in the past. And we don't worry about the future because it doesn't even exist yet. Our power to be who we want to be and how we want to be happens right now. relax a little bit, open your eyes when you feel comfortable. Realize that that experience, that quiet, that peacefulness is available to us all the time. We don't want to be shaped by our environment's influence. We want to shape our environment by the peace that we bring to it. So some of the things that I came to learn is that there are problems in the world, but if we focus on the problems, then we're experiencing those in ourselves. But if we focus on the solutions, well, then we're able to build a better tomorrow by our actions right now. And if we're always making our actions right now in a way of growth, we're always going to be looking back on our life experience of something that we find, desirable. So some of the things that I found, one of them is meditation, and that's why I teach it. Is it helps us to be peaceful in ourselves, regardless of what our environment is, what kind of chaos is happening, or what kind of stress. We can always determine how we want to feel. Yoga is a great way that we create a balance and strength and flexibility, and we start growing beyond the boundaries or the limits that we've held for ourselves. There was a time that I couldn't really reach down and touch my toes, but now I can because I kept trying. And so I kept pushing myself, and you push past the pain to find gain. And so when we get comfortable being uncomfortable, more of life becomes comfortable. And we get past that pain by focusing on that breath again. So when we're in a situation that we're being pressured, if we're breathing in that upper diaphragm, that's where stress and anxiety and worry and stuff like that happens. But if we can shift our breath, and we shift it down into our lower belly, right? Then we can we realize, okay, I'm doing fine right now, and it's always right now. And that's where we have power. So some of the things I've come to realize, it's like, we have, unfortunately, like you said, you're going to be donating through Northwest Harvest, which is a great organization. They help to feed the hungry and the homeless, right? One of the things that we could recognize as an option is, grass is growing in a lot of places. Well, wherever grass grows, food could also grow. And so when we plant those seeds in the community, and we plant those seeds in the ground, and we water them, and we give them our intention and our attention, we're actually helping many more things grow. There's a lot of options that aren't being advertised to us because nobody makes money off of it. And so if we recognize these options, we're able to step in, and we're able to live life much more efficiently, and we can do it where we're living locally and we're working locally with our communities, but we're learning from great resources like the internet, global methods of efficiency. So, because I've learned that in other countries, they're using their human waste and food byproducts to create methane gas. And so instead of paying for the natural gas to come through a meter, they just have a unit set up, and it provides that naturally for them. And there's places that are building houses built out of rocks and recycled materials, and there's ways to do that to where they heat themselves, they cool themselves, and once they're built, they last for a really, really long time. Some of the other things that recognizing is we have technology in every level and every direction that is amazing. I mean, we've been able to do so many things as humanity. We can really have this chance to thrive. But we're still not doing things quite as efficiently as we can. We've got electric cars, but we're plugging them into the wall. Whereas, what if the electric cars had solar panels for the roofs, the hoods, all the exposed, panels on the vehicle? You wouldn't park it inside of a garage. You would just park it out in the parking lot, and it would fill up every time that you park it. And a lot of times we're only making small trips. Even today, I live out by the firing center, and it was only about 12 miles that I had to come in, to town. So in that time, just a small battery bank would allow that to happen. And then here in Yakima, we're Palm Springs of Washington, right? The sun comes out a lot, and we're experiencing the heat during the summertime. Right, yeah.
On Highway 8, I-82 off of First Street's where around the corner toward down to Union where the sign says that. It wasn't the Palm Springs of Washington when you get on the freeway from Highway 12 on the I-82, for example, from Seal. I mean, there's a sign that says that by the Harley-Davidson station.
Right.
There's a sign that says, well, the Palm Springs of Washington. It just, the sign still exists there, I'm saying.
And there's a lot of alternatives that we can also be seeking for power generation too. Most cities are built around falling water resources, like rivers. And instead of building a dam, what if we had paddle wheels that through mechanical advantage, gears, pulleys, stuff like that, we're running generators that wouldn't cost us much to provide power, in our local communities. So these are all options that are, being used around the world, but we're not yet using them everywhere. We've kind of created grid systems which are of benefit, but they can also be of a detriment, because when one aspect fails, many people fail. A couple of the other things, we can be gathering our food, from the stores, but it costs a lot of money, or we can be gathering it from the source, like we talked about. If anywhere that soil and water and light happen, we can be growing our food. And some of the foods that are available have become genetically modified, right? We can also choose a different GMO, a grow my own, right? And so we recognize these options, and a lot of times it is just a play on words. It's how we can recognize from other models how we can change what we're doing each day. And instead of working compulsively, we're working consciously. So, any questions so far?
I just wanted to say, I asked a question, this has to do with the first thing you said, but I don't think you know this, but I'm actually active in yoga.
Awesome.
Did you know that I actually go to this, I went there earlier today, and I took you into a class, it's called Yoga Practice over there by a chalet place, yeah.
Oh,
I
nice.
used to go before that. Did you know that, if you guys didn't know, I go to yoga and I'm going to go tomorrow too and see a cousin that teaches, yeah.
Great.
For
But
Heather,
the Yoga Collective of Yakima, our classes are all offered for free.
I actually pay for mine, but I've got a lot of many people for mine. I go it's any class, French card, and first one was free, but I have like 4 left on mine. That's pretty awesome, man. I go to yoga practice. I used to go to the one by 6th Avenue River Road called Yoga Hotspot, hot room. But this one's actually regular temperature right now, yeah. Close to here, yeah.
Yeah. So the Yoga Collective is at 2614 West Knoxville, over by Ted Brown Music. And there's a website, yokoi.org, YOCOY.org. Or you can find us on Facebook too, Yoga Collective of Yakima. And
There's all kinds of yoga classes in town as well.
yeah,
That's what I'm just saying. I go to yoga sometimes, yeah. There's the one that's across from, on Shadow Place, across from the bookshop.
good. I'd like to
Next
renew hot
to-
yoga.
It's actually a regular temperature place.
Okay.
It's next to directly there's my shop go up there. The one on Naga Boulevard was called Renew You across from Safeway. There's one on. There's also one on River Road by True Place and near the cinema and stuff on 600 by Green Bear. That's called Yoga Hotspot too. Yeah, there's all kinds of them in town. Sorry.
One of the other things I'd like to touch on is permaculture. And we live in an agriculture valley, and a lot of things are being grown by themselves, right? And in nature, diversity is what thrives. We don't have the consistent input of chemicals, and like we notice, during a picking season, we have a lot of people being employed to do one task, whereas one of the things I'm also teaching is called permaculture, and it's basically based on a permanent culture that once you shape the land and you mulch it and you plant intentionally with diversity, you're always having a crop coming off. And it's pretty self-sustaining. And so you might have apples growing over here, and pears growing over here, and lettuce growing underneath them, and some carrots over here. And then you can range your goats, you bring them through, and then you can bring chickens through, and it's more of a natural way of living in our environment. And we're creating sufficiency, self-sufficiency, locally, but also with the means that we already have established, we can be sharing globally. And right now, we're gaining a lot of our food from faraway resources, whereas when we do it right out in our yards, it's a lot more. It tastes so much better. To grab a tomato right off of the vine and and place that in your salad or put it on your sandwich or make a soup, it really is a really great benefit. One of the aspects of permaculture too, we're doing hugelculture, which is digging trenches across hillsides for water management. And so the snow that melts off the hills in the wintertime, it works to hold the water in the mountains. And so that way we don't have problems with flooding Fred Meyer every spring. So when we're holding that water in the mountains, it works more like a flywheel effect. So you charge the aquifers with the water that falls on the land, and then when the aquifers get charged to a point that they're full, the springs start flowing. And then some of the models that I'm duplicating, I'm copying from around the world, in less than 10 years, after they've shaped the land and planted, they've been able to get creeks to flow again that haven't flowed for hundreds of years. So it's showing that through our action, our conscious action, and when we start giving back to the land and we start working with it, everything thrives. Is there any other questions?
Your permaculture, are you doing that in Yakima?
Yes, I have a permaculture-based homestead out in East Sela. I call it Hawks Haven. And if you're interested, I have a Facebook page devoted to that. It's called U of U at Hawks Haven, like University of U at Hawks Haven. And I'm doing many of the different principles, terracing, and then I also have an outdoor yoga studio that I teach privately out there. And I've also been teaching up in Ellensburg through the Trellis Center. It's an organic farm that works with developmentally disabled, and they are running the farm. And it's a really neat program. We've been working with them for all summer, basically, doing yoga and meditation. But yeah, with terracing, the hugelculture, I have goats and chickens and food growing everywhere in abundance. And all the foods that I like to eat, that's what I put in the ground. And so I'm just kind of providing a model that other people can come and they can get ideas and they can improve on them, or they can, resources like YouTube. That's where I've learned so much. I call it YouTube University. And it's free. I don't get a piece of paper that tells me what I've accomplished, but when I put what I've learned into action, it becomes apparent.
Now, have you got about an acre? Does an acre sustain what?
Yeah, I'm working on 16 acres right now, and on 1 acre, a person can be completely self-sustaining.
Self-sustaining, okay.
Yeah, actually even less than that. Especially using principles like vertical gardening and raised beds, and there's so much to learn, so much great knowledge is being shared on YouTube, and how we can even make our own money on just a 1 acre parcel. There's some folks in Canada that are making over $100,000 a year on 1 acre without equipment. They're growing local greens and herbs for local restaurants, and basically they have their wheelbarrow and their hand tools, and they're able to be completely self-sufficient off of just 1 acre.
Tell us about how you evolved into all of this, because your life story a little bit on where you came from to where you are now.
Great. So I had pretty much normal life. I went through high school, and then I joined the Air Force. I spent 9 years working in civil engineering, specializing in utilities, and so water, wastewater, natural gas, those civil engineering aspects. I spent 9 years. I had a couple of deployments, and I realized it was something that I was ready to step away from. And so in 2001, I chose to get out of the Air Force and to start my own private career. I worked in the valley here for a plumbing contractor, and I actually helped do the plumbing here on this building. And after working for them for 5 years, I realized that I was helping to make somebody else money, and so I wanted to do that for myself. And so I started my own business. It was a leap of faith, and that's really the only way we grow, is when we're willing to step out of our comfort range. And the first month I only made $800, which was far less than I was making with the contractor. And I was like, oh gosh, what did I do? But I stuck with it. And 9 years later, I was able to retire from business. I got hospitalized from stress, and I nearly bled to death. And I had a wake-up call. And there's a lot of things that I realized that I wanted to change in my life. And some of the things I felt mattered more than plumbing and making money and doing that kind of stuff was permaculture, yoga. Because permaculture repairs the land, and yoga helps to repair the individual. And all we are as a community is a bunch of individuals. So we can't fix everybody else, but if we fix ourselves, and we inspire other people to fix themselves, collectively, we have a nice society of everybody being happy, content, peaceful, joyful, and we work together, and we can all do that voluntarily. So I just really started focusing my energy in learning everything I could about yoga and meditation and all the different techniques, and then started teaching through the Yoga Collective, and I've had a lot of great reviews. People are really gaining from the classes, the meditations. 5 o'clock every Sunday, we have mindfulness meditation, which is one of the best tools that I think anybody can implement into their life. It's just recognizing what we can control, how to control it, realizing that we can't control other people. We have to sometimes let clowns be clowns, but we don't have to give them our energy to attend their circus. So, but when we focus on ourselves, we're focusing on what we can control. Any other questions?
Did you ever have
I
a...
like your idea about the, the growing and for the community and all that. One of the things I saw in the Philippines, I was there for about 2 weeks. And the first week, we're going down the highway, and I saw all these people going through a big concrete wall with gaps in it, in and out, and in and out throughout the day. I'd be just traveling, and I would see people coming in and out. So I asked one of the locals, I said, what is in there? And it was a community garden, but it wasn't for vegetables, pharmacy.
Really?
So if somebody had a headache, they could go in and they would, cut some kind of a plant and make a tea out of it. Somebody else had a toothache, they'd go in and pull out, I think it's oil of clove, they would take the clove and they would use it.
Right.
And so rather than having, that's their idea of a social system.
Yeah.
Is for the very poor who couldn't afford the hospital, they could go there and get different things.
A lot of
And
times.
the community just grows it.
Yeah. A lot of times pharmacy has taken extracts of those plants, and actually a lot of the plants that are considered, or they're considered a weed or an invasive species, have high medicinal value. And so we've been eradicating those, but then going to Weimar, the pharmacy of Weimar.
Yeah.
And so there are some of the things that, sure, pharmacy can offer us that maybe we can't gather or gain for ourselves, but there are a lot of things that are available from the land that are free, and they're in their most natural form and don't have the side effects. There's another question?
Did you have a mentor, when you made this transition from being a plumber to the work that you're doing now? Was there any one person that
There's
helped
been
you?
a lot of them. One of my favorite spiritual mentors has been Sadhguru. He's a gentleman in India. He's also got an ashram in Tennessee, and he is one of the wisest men that I've ever listened to. And I've listened to at least 1,000 hours over the last 10 years of his work. And there's a lot of Jeff Lawton is a permaculturist, and he's gone all over the world turning deserts back into forest, food forest. and using condensation curtains and different types of condensation generation tools, they've been able to grow food in the driest deserts on Earth. One of the methods I'm using as a condensation generation tool is I'm stacking rocks. And so if you take take the rocks out of the earth and you stack them up into piles, and then you can plant around that, the rocks, they cool over the nighttime, and then the morning air warms up before the rocks do. And so then you're pulling moisture right out of the air. It's condensating on the rocks and then dripping down into the root systems for the plants. And so there's just so many things that are the ahas, because you don't, one of the best things I ever learned was there are things that you don't even know that you don't know until you know them, you know? And there's been a lot of those. And the more open I am to other people's ideas and recognizing that I don't know everything, but somebody knows something more than I do, and if I'm willing to open my mind and open my time to listening to them and and recognizing what they can contribute, there's a lot to be had. Are there any more questions?
I'm going through stress too, so I gotta focus on me, not anybody else.
Right, and it almost sounds being selfish,
Yeah.
but it's actually being very selfless, because we're focusing on what actually is going to work, and then we're being a person that other people can look up to.
Okay.
It's not that we don't care about other people. It's that we need to make sure that I liken it to the fact that, like, if you walk into a room that's pitch black and everybody was holding a candle but they didn't know that they light, right? And everybody's sitting in the dark. But one person walks in and they have their candle lit. Well, everybody else starts to see, well, how's that happen? They can see through this dark, but I can't. And it doesn't take anything from that one person's candle to light another person's candle. And then imagine how that works. You can have a huge auditorium, and as one person gets lit and theirs starts burning bright, they start touching it to everybody around them. And when everybody around them, it just spreads like ferocity. And so, but we have to make sure that our candle is burning before we can help light others.
What are some basic yoga exercises that we could do at our house, at our homes?
There's a lot of guided yoga on YouTube. There are great resources, and we actually even teach like chair yoga, and there are guided chair yogas on YouTube as well. A lot of yoga is just about movement, and it's pushing your arms out as far as you can, and not just holding them out, but pushing out as far as you can. And when you're pushing out as far as you can, you're stretching your fingers all the way out. Maybe with your legs, you're using the traction available with your feet, and you're pushing apart with your legs, and you might actually start moving in ways that you don't know that you're moving, or you haven't moved before. And whenever we're engaging our body, that's yoga. Because yoga is a Sanskrit term for union. And union is recognizing our mind and body and soul connections, or spirit connection. And when we balance our mind, we balance our body, we're gaining strength, flexibility, and we start to grow. And when we start to grow in one direction, our body is like a trinity. That body, mind, and soul connection. And it's always going to seek a balance. So if we work physically, our mind is also going to be expanding. And so we're going to work in different ways in our mind. Ideas are going to come to us a little easier. And we kind of transcend ego. And ego is like the impressions that we've gained from our environment on how to react to stimulus, from the environment. When we start doing that consciously, instead of compulsively, we're working more in line with our highest growth. More from our heart versus what we've remembered from the past, or what we've been kind of trained to do.
I do yoga classes. I've done earlier that I do yoga classes. Yeah. I pay for where I go, of course, yeah.
Right.
I said that right earlier.
Yeah, but
It's called yoga practice near here. That's all.
yeah, so the Yoga Collective has been open for about 6 years now, and I haven't been involved that long. I've only been involved just over a year. But the lady that built the Yoga Collective, she recognized that not everybody can afford to pay for yoga, but she wanted to make sure it was available to everybody, you know, regardless of socioeconomic status. And
Rainier Square?
Huh?
Rainier Square?
Rainier Square, yeah, right there by Ted Brown Music, right behind Red Robin.
What?
Yeah, and so we have over 30 volunteer instructors and roughly about 70 classes per month. And we've been completely just supported voluntarily by the community. You know, it costs us about $20 per class to make sure that we have the building and heat or air conditioning and lights and stuff like that on. But we've never had to we've never had to ask for, you know, anything from the suppliers of those. We've been able to provide that just through the voluntary cooperation of the people that come. So. Yes.
So I understand that yoga is very much a spiritual practice.
Yes.
Do you ever run into any resistance, or how do you overcome that resistance with people who have a very strong spiritual religious background already and seeing that perhaps being counterproductive?
Right. So I've been asked that question before. People liken yoga to a religion, but it's not a belief, or it's not having to have a faith. It's more of like a science. It's a cause and effect model. So like when we put our body into muscle tension, our muscles get stronger and bigger, right? And when we put our mind into that calm, centered way of being, where we're very peaceful, we lessen our stress in our life, the dis-ease, right? And when we lessen stress, they say it's estimated that 70 to 80% of physical ailment is due to stress. And when we can remove stress from our life, and that's what I did. To get back into why I ended up in the hospital, being a plumbing contractor and doing everything, you know, that I was doing, there was a lot of stress. Every morning I would get sick just a little bit, and it was just, it was the stress. But I didn't know it at that time. And I actually went to the hospital before this. They ran a bunch of tests, they ran upper GIs, they did blood work, they did all these things, and they said, there's nothing wrong with you. I said, no, I think there is, because I don't think everybody's getting sick every morning. And they're like, well, we can't find anything wrong with you. And so I started taking like antacid medication, and that helped curb the problem, but it still didn't take care of it. When I went in the hospital, I came to a realization that it was stress, and I started shifting a lot of things in my life. And when I did that, I was able to get rid of the stress, and I was able to start stepping into health. And for almost a decade, I haven't been sick for even an hour. And whereas before, you know, like when I was working for a contractor or when I was in the active duty, you know, you get a certain amount of sick leave, or I was using it at least, you know, a couple days a year, because you just woke up and you're like, I don't want to go to work today because I don't feel well. I haven't had any of those days. And, you know, now, basically, yoga has helped me in that cause and effect. I'm one of the most flexible people I know. I'm 45 years old. My daughter was in cheerleading and in gymnastics, and she's 20 now, and I can stretch more than her. And so, you know, she's taken kind of a hiatus from her stretching and strength routines, and now I can show her up a little bit, you know. But it's just to show that if we start working at any age, at any level of fitness towards our goals, eventually we reach them. And it's taking one step after another, and just keeping that going, you know, because every little step in a direction that we desire is going to get us there. It's just confidence and trusting in yourself.
I'm 80% your age. Sorry, let's make it brief. I'm 80% your age, which takes 45 divided by 5 is 9, so 9, 18, 27, 36 is how I am 45. Yeah. So from 20, 40, 60, 80, 100 is what I'm doing for like the math for the for the 5 different 9s and the 5 different 20s.
Right. Awesome.
That's what I was going to say.
Mental math is a great tool to have, right?
Pretty good math, but my sister's not good. She tries it, and my mom the other. My dad was good at math compared to me, better than he was in life. Yeah. I'll stop now. Go on, sorry. Go on.
So, was there any other questions?
When you're irrigating, do you use irrigation too? Or?
I do. Right now, because I'm on the north side of a hillside, I'm on the north side of Yakima Ridge,
Okay.
and the shaping that I've done to my property, I'm able to hold back about 400,000 gallons of surge capacity coming off of the north side.
That's a lot.
And so I've created aqueducts that go from the valleys, and so I basically call it creeks to peaks. And so I bring it from a creek or from a valley of erosion, and I divert it out to the peak areas, and then I have big seepage ponds that I've built. And they only stay full for about a week.
Okay.
And I had a lady from the ecology department. She was interested in the project. She came out and walked around the property, and she says, well, you know, in theory, this looks great, but does it work? And I said, actually, yes, it does. I've already filled these up 5 times, and it's just been over the last few years. And I showed her some videos, and she says, wow, it would have cost the government millions of dollars to accomplish what you've done. I said, I know, I worked for them for 9 years. I recognize that there's a lot of extra hoops to jump through when you're dealing with the public property or government-maintained land. Whereas on my private property, these are all just little projects. And so what I'm providing there is a template. And right now, because the hugelkultur beds aren't complete, I've only got one of them complete. It hasn't yet been mulched over. But by covering the hugelkultur, I'm sorry, I don't think I finished on that. Digging trenches across, pile organic material, logs, branches, leaves, manure, grass, food scraps, that kind of stuff, cardboard, paper. I pile that in the trenches. And so basically I create about a 7-foot by 3-foot envelope of organic material, and it's on a berm, and then I cover it again with dirt. And then it'll be covered again with some manure and some chipped yard waste from the landfill. Currently I've hauled over 100 tons of chipped yard waste from the landfill over the property. And that really helps to keep the water from evaporating off the land. And every time it rains, snows, it's also pushing those nutrients into the soil. And so once all those are established, those are what will feed the trees and stuff that are planted on the bottom side of those berms through the summertime, because it acts like a big water battery, and basically an underground sponge. And as it releases those nutrients over time, it decomposes, but it takes 20 to 30 years, because by placing the dirt over the top, you're creating an anaerobic environment, so it slows the decomposition of the material. And that's just stuff that I've learned from other folks and implementing it. You can also do it small scale too. So some of your, in your gardens or in your yards, you can just dig a hole, and you can place branches and leaves and stuff like that, and then you can plant around them. And then the roots will kind of seek into that nutrient resource. So like right now I'm using drip irrigation. And I've built manifolds where I can hook my hoses up to the manifold, and then I can divert the water to different areas. And then micro water, like aqueducts, just basically 1 shovel width full, or 1 shovel width wide, and about 1 foot deep. And I just kind of dig trenches back and forth across the hill, and then plant accordingly. So using as many natural laws as I can, gravity being one of them.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So another thing about yoga is, I know I'm jumping around here a little bit, but yoga is the original anytime fitness. Like right now, we could all be doing yoga. We can be, just for a moment, if you could all place your hands out on a table or on your legs and push down as hard as you can. And this is something we can be doing while we're standing in line at a grocery store even. And if you bring your feet together and then pull them together as hard as you can, and you'll get to a point that you achieve a muscle failure, right? And when you start to feel that muscle failure, well, then you can switch it, and you can maybe hold your hands together, and then you try to pull them apart. And so then you'll recognize there's a whole different section of your muscles that's being used. And then, with your feet, instead of pushing them together, you could just twist them up, and then you could be pulling them apart. So you're gaining all the way up through major muscle groups, It also works as weight management, because anytime we're engaging those large muscle groups, we're burning energy. And it's a great tool. It's another thing about yoga. It's not about ego. Like sometimes if you're at a gym, you have somebody marking off how many times they can push 118 pounds or 120 pounds or whatever. Whereas yoga, nobody ever really knows how much you're doing. You could be doing a simple down dog position, but how hard you're pushing a part on the ground available, how much tension you're putting in your body dictates your level of exertion. So it might look like we're not doing too much, but it really can. And the inversions work to feed our brains more blood, because we're upside down in some of the poses. So.
Cool.
Is there anything else?
How much time a week do you spend out in amongst your garden, to maintain what you got going out there?
Right now I've been helping with my taking care of my grandma, but normally just a couple of hours a day I can be working on a project, and I get quite a bit done. And I incorporate as much of a workout into that as possible. So like I have 5 basic stations that I turn on in the mornings, or areas that I'm watering. And so I'll run from station to station. And it actually works better for my well that way too, because if you can get all the water running at once, you can get the well to turn on, and it's not turning on and off. And so I've got a lot of elevation change. And so I get my morning workout, and the dogs get to go running with me. And so it all just depends on how we do things, to how long it takes and what we can accomplish each day. Well, if there's not any other questions, I thank you. I think I'm out of time. I've probably even gone over a little bit.
Thank you.
I thank you guys for asking me to come, and I appreciate you all, and hope to see you again.
Thank you.